I always ask of everyone that I interview, for the new entrepreneurs that are just getting started out there, what's one piece of advice that you would always recommend to an entrepreneur, something that you've learned over the years that they can take with them in their new venture, and then something you'd completely avoid, like something that you really screwed up on that you'd never do again?
Okay, sure. So I think in terms of advice, I think it's very important to seek out, to actively seek out and listen very carefully to negative feedback. And this is something that people tend to avoid because it's painful.
Yeah.
But I think this is a very common mistake, is to not actively seek out and listen to negative feedback.
Where do you do that? Do you go into forums? Do you go into Twitter? Like, what are your areas where you go to look for feedback on, let's say, the Tesla?
Well, it's like everyone I talk to is, in fact, when friends get a product, I say, look, don't tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like.
Right.
And because otherwise your friend is not going to tell you what he doesn't like.
Right.
It's going to say, oh, I love this and that, and then leave out the this is the stuff I don't like list, because he wants to be your friend, it doesn't want to offend you. So so you really need to sort of coax negative feedback, and you know that if somebody is your friend, or at least not your enemy, and they're giving you negative feedback, then they may be wrong, but it's coming from a good place. And sometimes even your enemies give you good negative feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's important. People just feel like positive feedback, like water off a duck's back. That's like, really underweight that and overweight negative feedback.
Right.
And then I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing.
Me Too type ideas.
Yeah,
Slight
iterations
yeah.
on a theme, and it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world, and what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths, and say, okay, what are we sure is true, or as sure as possible is true, and then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
Give me an example of that. Like, what's one thing that you've done that on that you feel has worked for you?
Sure. So somebody could say, and in fact people do, that battery packs are really expensive, and that's just the way they'll always be, because that's the way they've been in the past. You're like, well, no, that's pretty dumb, because if you applied that reasoning to anything new, then you wouldn't be able to ever get to that new thing.
Right.
It's like you can't say, oh, horses, nobody wants a car because horses are great and we're used to them and they can eat grass, and there's lots of grass all over the place, and there's no gasoline that people can buy, so people are never going to get cars.
Right.
People did say that. And for batteries, they would say, oh, it's going to cost, historically it's cost $600 per kilowatt hour, and so it's not going to be much better than that in the future. And you say, no, okay, well, what are the batteries made of? So first principles would be to say, okay, what are the material constituents of the batteries? What is the spot market value of the material constituents? So you can say, okay, it's got cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, and some polymers for separation, and a steel can. So break that down on a material basis and say, okay, what if we bought that in the London Metal Exchange, what would each of those things cost? Like, oh, geez, it's like $80 per kilowatt hour. So clearly, you just need to think of clever ways to take those materials and combine them into the shape of a battery cell, and you can have batteries that are much, much cheaper than anyone realizes.
Is that your big challenge at Tesla? Is battery?
It's the single biggest item, but right now it's not any kind of obstacle to us. There are a whole bunch of of little issues that are kind of trivial that are challenges when you're making a new product, because there are several thousand unique parts in the car. 90% of them are fine, 5% of them are slightly problematic, 3% or 4% are problematic, and 1% are extremely problematic. But you cannot ship a car that is 99% complete. It's not like software, you can disable functionality, but with a car, you can't ship it without like a steering wheel or like without the back seat or something like that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Right.
You're a huge inspiration to a lot of entrepreneurs out there, so I know they're going to enjoy this. And thanks for having us in your factory here.
All right.
That's awesome.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.